Hello and welcome to the Juicy Bike assembly video. Following these simple steps, you'll be riding away on your Juicy Bike as soon as possible. You're probably here because you've taken delivery of your Juicy Bike via courier. If so, please carefully inspect all packaging for any signs of damage or mishandling during the courier service. Although we insure all bikes against damage, this insurance ceases once you have accepted the carton. If in any doubt, sign any delivery note not yet inspected to preserve your right to claim for any damages caused in transport from us to you. Now that you have your bike inside, it's time to relax. This is a process that should be taken slowly, so it may be handy to make yourself a cup of tea and carefully go through the process. The tools you will require to complete your build will be a 15mm spanner, a pair of snips, and possibly a box knife. Electric bikes are often quite heavy and substantial objects, so it's always best to have two people on hand for removing the bike from the carton. If this is not possible and you're on your own, it's best to cut away the front of the box using the box knife. To do this, carefully and slowly cut down the corners of both sides at the front of the carton. This will ensure that no contact comes between the blade and the bike. Once this is done, carefully pull down the flap you've now created, ensuring the bike is stable and does not fall forward as you do so. You've now got the chance to see your new Juicy Bike in all of its glory. Removing your bike from the carton, locate the kickstand and place to one side. Be sure to retrieve any extra components inside the box. These may be attached to the rear rack or simply placed in the bottom of the carton. Once you've made sure there's nothing left inside the carton, you will no longer need it and may go ahead and recycle. Now it's time to retrieve those extra components that came in the box. These will be needed to complete the bike build. In the box, you should find a pair of pedals, potentially a rear light, although many of our bikes do come with the rear light already attached, the battery charger, a Juicy assembly manual, and all of the relevant hex keys that you will need to successfully assemble your bike. You may now use the snips to go around your bike and remove all excess packaging. Pay particular attention when removing the packaging around the rear derailleur. Some of our bikes arrive with the handlebars attached to the side of the frame. Be careful not to release these yet to avoid unnecessary pressure being applied to the cables. For this type of fixed handlebar, you will first need to reveal the stem. Using a 4mm hex key, loosen the bolts on either side of the stem to allow the stem to swivel forward. Turning the stem 180 degrees, roughly align the handlebar stem with the front wheel. This doesn't need to be perfect at this point, as we will fully align later. Next, you will need to use the 4mm Allen key to fully remove the faceplate and all of the bolts. Ensure that these are put to one side safely and within reach, as soon you will need to reapply them, but using one hand only. It is now time to release the handlebars that we left attached earlier. Rotate the handlebars, ensuring that the cables are not caught and offer them up to the handlebar stem. Locate the grip lines on the handlebars and roughly align them with the stem. Retrieve the faceplate that we removed earlier and secure with the same hand being used to stabilise the handlebars. When reinserting the bolts, work in a cross-diagonal motion. First, you will need to simply finger tighten the bolts into each of the holes. You should now be able to release your grip of the handlebars and fully align the handlebars using the grip lines inside the handlebar stem. Ensuring that this alignment does not slip, start to tighten using the same cross-diagonal motion with the 4mm hex key. Do this a couple of turns at a time before moving on to the next bolt. As you work your way around, you should feel the bolts start to fully tighten. Once you can feel them properly start to grip, give it a quarter turn extra, being careful not to over tighten the bolts, thus stripping the thread. You may now finish removing all packaging left on the bike. Now it is time to properly align the handlebars with your front wheel. To do this, place your foot underneath the wheel to ensure that it cannot swivel, and turn the handlebars so that they are perpendicular with the front wheel. It can often help to use a reference line. This could be a line in the floorboards or simply a piece of masking tape laid for roughly 1 metre in front of the bike. Once the handlebars are perfectly perpendicular, retighten the bolts we loosened earlier on the side of the stem, ensuring again the bolts are not over tightened. Even when you believe the handlebars are perfectly aligned, we would always recommend taking the bike for a quick test ride in a safe environment to ensure alignment is perfect and make any small alterations before heading out for your first extended ride. Some of our bikes may arrive with the wheels strapped to the side of the bike and not pre-installed. To attach the front wheel, first locate the quick release mechanism, which should be with all of the components you found earlier in a box. The quick release skewer has 2 different ends. On one side is a lever and the other side a nut. To insert the quick release mechanism into the axle, you will first need to remove the nut, the washer and the spring. You are then able to insert the quick release skewer through the axle, ensuring the lever is on the side which does not contain the brake disc. You will then need to reinsert the washer, the spring, and finally loosely screw the nut onto the end of the skewer. Now it's time to offer the wheel up to the forks. Take your time and care when inserting the skewer into the forks and the brake disc into the brake caliper. Once you are happy that the wheel is slotted in as it should, lift the wheel as high into the forks as you can and tighten the quick release mechanism using the nut and the lever. You must ensure at this point that the lever is in the open position. This is then used to fully clamp the wheel into the forks once you have finished tightening. Once you have finished, give the wheel a spin to ensure it is running smooth and true. If you have any doubts, remove the wheel and complete the alignment process again. Some of the bikes in our range feature an adjustable handlebar stem. During transport, handlebars with a quill stem will come with a protective cap covering the mechanism. This must first be removed by simply pulling it downwards as shown. The handlebars can then be released using the snips, and rotated into place. In this instance, the handlebar stem should be inserted into the frame and lowered as far as it will go. Next, you will need to retrieve the 6mm Allen key and open the quick adjuster using the latch on top and locate the hole where the tightening bolt can be found. As shown, this will be at the base of the stem. Inserting the 6mm hex key will allow you to tighten the handlebar stem. You should now do this using the same techniques for alignment as shown earlier. You may also need to tighten the grip of the handlebar stem. This will ensure there is no movement in the tilt of the handlebars whilst riding. Once you are happy with the tilt, the height and the position, return the clamp into the closed position, making sure you hear the click for reassurance it is completely locked in place. The final step for completing the handlebar setup is to fix the wiring loom onto its clip as shown. Your handlebars are now ready to go. Next up, it's time to fit the pedals. First, retrieve the pedals and also the 15mm spanner and take them over to your cranks. Each pedal is individual and threaded for a specific side of the bike. To determine which pedal is which, locate the L or the R sign, which can be found either on the face of the pedal or on the tip of the thread. As you can probably imagine, the L side goes on the left-hand side of the bike, the R side goes on the right-hand side of the bike. When inserting the pedal into the crank, always tighten towards the front of the bike. Therefore, if you are inserting the right pedal, tighten in a clockwise motion and the left pedal in an anti-clockwise motion. Once the thread has caught, you can quickly and easily insert the rest by rotating the crank arm backwards whilst holding firmly onto the axle. Once the pedal is finger tight, use the 15mm spanner to fully tighten the pedal into the crank, again ensuring you do not over tighten. All of our bikes come with the ability to raise the height and the rake of the saddle, as well as moving the saddle slightly further forwards or backwards on the rails. Depending on the bike, you may have a quick release saddle clamp or one which requires a hex key. All you need to do is simply loosen the seat post clamp and raise the saddle to the desired height. Correct saddle position is of particular importance on bikes which have a torque censored system. We would recommend a saddle height just below the base of your hip and such that when you are sat on the saddle and your heel is placed on the pedal, your leg should be fully extended. This is the single best way to avoid injury whilst riding and also allow your duty bike to operate at maximum efficiency. Now that your bike has been fully assembled and perfectly fit to your height and your reach, there are a few final checks before going out for a ride. First up, inflate your tyres to the recommended PSI. This information can be found on the inside wall of your tyre. A properly inflated tyre will not only help with the puncture resistancy, but also increase the range of your battery by decreasing the rolling resistance on the road. You will also want to test that your display is functioning properly, as well as the front and rear light. This can be done by pressing and holding the central button on your display and awaiting the display to turn on. For bikes with silver batteries, you will first need to turn the battery on with the key. Slight adjustments can also be made to the gear shifting. If you find that whilst riding, your gears are struggling to shift down, then slightly rotate the adjuster cap as shown in an anti-clockwise rotation. If you are finding that your gears are struggling to move up a gear, rotate in the same way but in a clockwise rotation. This should be done in very small movements. If you find that there are still some problems, it's probably best to take it to a professional service centre and have the gears correctly aligned. The final thing you will need to do is to give it a full charge using the provided charging cable. The charging port can be found in several different locations. For bikes with hidden internal batteries, the charge port can be found between the cranks, and for external removable batteries, the charge port will be found directly on the battery itself. Please be sure to read all of our battery health care guidelines. Following these guidelines will massively improve the range and the longevity of your battery. And that's it, you're ready to go. If you have any further questions, our most up-to-date manual alongside individual manuals for the LCD display can be found at our website, and our friendly team are always available to help with any questions you have. Just simply give us a call.